Sit as a group.
Does the crowd know what they're doing?
I would think so, but no, but that's not what happens. Before you're
New York City Bar Association's Entertainment Committee. Tonight we have a psychic murder musical mystery play. And it is by our welcome The fact is, the man has written all our 12th night shows in the past, and I want you to mark your calendars for January 23rd, a very special day. Our 12th night returns here to the City Bar, honoring former City Corporation Council Peter Dizozza. So mark your calendars for your next Entertainment Committee event. And tonight, let's give a warm welcome to our cast of The Psychic Murder Case by Myron D. Cohen. On the stage.
attend the tale of psychic charm. Her skill was good and she meant no harm. She saw the future in everyone. If she looked at your aura, you could be done. She saw the path that drew. It was quite odd. Alice Meadows, the psychic.
She was, of course, of some renown. She helped police track criminals down. What if her talents led her astray? What did she do? What could she say? That Alice Meadows the psychic.
Yes, you shot your gun. Alice shot him to the ground. You knew you eventually would be found.
Her story was good, it seemed quite fair. An aura of deceit and then despair. A license gun and bullets to spare. Happened so fast she was caught unaware. She was evil, she was quick. Alice Meadows. Alice Meadows, the psychic.
Quiet Princess Alice was from collecting. Yes, she
Something she kept under her lid. Alice saw things that nobody did. She said she did not act on a whim. Could have been her instead of him. Alice was smooth, Alice was subtle. Alice could see things turn into rubble.
Quiet and Princess Alice was calm and collected. Yes, she was.
Alice was smooth, Alice was subtle. Alice could see things turn into rubble. Alice, 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 Alice.
Attend the tale of psychic charm.
Attend the tale of psychic charm.
Her skill was good, she meant no harm.
Her skill was good, she meant no harm.
What happened then? Well, that's the play, and she wouldn't want us to give it away. Now, Alice.
Alice Meadows. Alice Meadows the psychic.
Well, good evening, and thanks for coming. My name is Harry Edison. I'm a neighbor. I live in the Neck. Been there for many, many years. I'm retired now, but I used to be a trial lawyer. Commuted into Manhattan on the Long Island Railroad from Cold Spring Harbor. I was a commuter on the railroad even before Governor Rockefeller vowed to make it the best railroad on Long Island. Anyway, I don't know if any of you ever traveled on the railroad in the 1960s, but it was really a conveyance. It wasn't a conveyance for sissies. They tell a story about a fellow who was racing for the train, slipped, fell into the last car. A priest was nearby, came to administer last rites. He looks at this guy and he says, "Son, if you've led a good life, you're going to be in heaven very shortly. If you haven't, well, you're going to the other place." And the poor guy looks up at him and he says, "Oh, that's okay, Father, so long as I don't have to change to Jamaica." I practiced law for 41 years. I represented defendants for the same reason Willie Sutton robbed banks. In any event, in all that time, I only represented one woman, but she was a doozy. I thought you might like to hear about that story because it made headlines all across the country. I think my wife has never really forgiven me for taking her on. Martha is a good woman. We've been married more than 50 years. Sometimes it seems longer. Anyway, there she is over there finishing up breakfast. You know, it all started in the kitchen. I was just finishing my last cup of coffee.
Harry, stop mumbling to yourself. Your coffee's getting cold, and you still have some time before you have to leave for the office.
I know, I seem to be going in later and later.
Work getting to you?
Oh, it's just paperwork. I'm lucky to get to trial twice a year.
Well, why don't you retire? You've talked about it often enough.
So what am I going to do? Raise flowers? Move to Florida? I'm not ready to adjourn to God's waiting room yet.
Come on, Harry, what's the matter? You can't tell your wife, who can you tell?
It's the same old stuff I've been doing for years. And the older I get, the more money is involved, and everybody's afraid to go to trial. So we just push papers around, and it's just, I don't know, it's just large companies suing other large companies for unfair competition. Whatever it is, there's no juice in it. I guess I'm just bored, that's all.
You know, this isn't like you. You never complained, even when you were first starting out, except about the community.
Well, yeah, but don't forget, in those days, the cases weren't so big. I could get to trial all the time. It was interesting work.
Well, you were a trial lawyer when we met.
Yeah, sure. I was trying criminal cases for legal aid. I was on trial all the time. It was lovely. That's how I learned the business.
But you left.
Sure, for the money. Then I met you. The kids came. We moved to Lloyd Neck. I never looked back.
You're not sorry.
No, of course not. Of course not. It's you know, it's like they say, it was in another country and beside the wench is dead. No, I'm sort of resigned to it now, and I'm just going to play out the string.
Well, I just wish you were a little... How could that be this early in the morning?
Hello, Harry.
Oh, hi.
Good.
Come on, have a seat. Have a cup of coffee with us. What brings you to... I hope now you couldn't wait till we get to the office. Honey, this is Marty Lowell, a young partner of
Hi,
mine.
Marty. Tea and sugar?
Just black, thanks. Listen, Harry, I had a favor to ask you, and I thought I'd do it first in an informal setting.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What's on your mind?
Well, I have a friend who has the most peculiar occupation, and she got herself involved in an incident that's going to make headlines everywhere, but I can't take the case on unless the firm approves it.
Oh, so you need a senior partner to... and I'm the patsy du jour. I still don't see why we couldn't do this back at the office.
Listen, I want you to meet her first in an informal setting. She's in a heap of trouble, and she doesn't trust anyone but me.
What kind of trouble is she in?
She's going to be indicted on a capital charge.
Murder? Oh, we've got precious little experience with that.
Listen, Harry, she hardly knows any other lawyers except me. And listen, you meet with her. If you think we can't take the case, I'll just walk away.
Well, what's so special about her?
She's a psychic.
What?
She's a professional psychic. She reads people's auras and then predicts their past and their futures.
And this is someone you want us to represent?
If it were up to me, I'd take on this case in a nanosecond. The first time she met my wife, she looked at her aura and diagnosed a serious illness.
Was she right?
You bet she was. My wife underwent some tests, she had surgery, and now she's cured. You can say the two of us are believers.
So why is she in jeopardy now?
Well, she apparently was helping the police track down a criminal, and she thought she was going to be attacked, and...
Wait a minute, wait. You're talking self-defense because she's a psychic, whatever in fact that is? I don't think so. I think you want a not guilty by reason of insanity defense.
Harry, just meet her. Just meet her.
Oh, go on, Harry. It might add some spice to your life.
This is ridiculous. All right, for you, I'll sit down and I'll meet with you. Where will we meet?
I think she's going to be arrested any minute. Why don't you meet her on the way to work at the Harvard Club? I'll make the arrangements.
How will we recognize? Oh, of course we'll recognize. She'll recognize me by my aura.
Stop all you want. I wasn't a believer at first.
And now you are?
You can say I have a much more open mind.
Well, if you don't leave now, you'll miss your train. And I want to hear all about it tonight.
All right. But when my partners hear about this, I'll be get lucky to be able to charge off breakfast. A lady coming for me. I'll be in the dining hall.
Very good, sir.
Mr. Edison.
That's me.
Hi, I'm Alice Meadows. Marty Lowell suggested that we meet.
Well, that's fine. Can I get you something? Something to eat? A cup of coffee or something?
Coffee would be great, thank you.
2 coffees, George.
Coming right up, sir. Careful. Things can get hot in here.
Thank you.
So, what can I do for you?
Well, has Marty told you anything about me?
Oh, I'm surprised you don't already know.
Well, I do, believe me.
Must be my aura, huh?
Well, yes, it is. And what I'd like for you to do is arrange for Marty to represent me when the government arraigns me for murder.
Look, there is no one in my firm, and that includes Marty, who has the expertise needed to represent you on a capital charge.
No, Marty is the only lawyer I know who has a belief in me and an understanding in my abilities to convince a jury that I did what I had to do to save myself.
Well, you certainly have an understanding of your own abilities, and Marty evidently believes in you. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get an associate to check out the law to see if there's any case law in New York that would allow the kind of a defense I think you're talking about. But I think you'd be much better off getting an experienced lawyer with an understanding of the criminal law who can really tell you how a jury would approach a defense based on psychic phenomena.
No, I need a lawyer who believes. And your partners will go along with Marty's representation of me. And so will you.
Well, what makes you think so?
I see the future in your aura.
In my aura? What in hell is an aura when it's at home?
Well, it's like a rainbow. Well, it's an energy emanating from every living thing, and I've learned from experience what auras go with what feelings and happenings.
And you can read these things?
Yes, all my life.
It's very hard for me to take this in, especially in the confines of the Harvard Club.
Well, in time you will come to believe. And you'll renew your acquaintance with the criminal law.
But what makes you think I've had any experience with the criminal law?
Well, you used to be a criminal defense attorney. You started your career with the legal aid.
Well, how would you know so? Oh, of course, Marty must have told you.
No, Marty and I have never mentioned that. I see it in your aura.
In my aura, huh? It looks like it's going to be an interesting couple of days.
Hey, pass the box, will ya?
There's only one donut left.
Yeah, but it's cream filled. You know they're my favorites.
Fine. Here.
Hey,
Woman.
we can get another box in half an hour. My treat.
You're a doll.
Hey, you finished that paperwork?
Almost. Damnedest case I was ever with.
You know, we never would have gotten him. There was just no hard evidence connecting him to the wife's murder. Hell, if it wasn't for that lady, we never would have found the body.
I never believed in ghost stories. I thought all that stuff was bunk. In fact, if the captain hadn't insisted, I wouldn't even have bothered talking to her.
Well, she sure put an end to that case. Shot him right between the eyes.
Ah, it's all politics now. DA's dying a prosecutor. You know that Post and Newsday will have a field day with this.
Yeah, but doesn't it bother you, after all the help she gave us, having to arrest her?
Sure, but she's got no defense. Look, he didn't even have a weapon. She shot him in cold blood. And what? Because she said his aura said he was going to strangle her? I mean, unless you believe in this psychic.
Yeah, I know, but I just still don't understand how she knew what she did. I mean, all we showed her was a photograph of the crime scene and the victim. We showed her a picture of the husband and a couple of other men who weren't even involved.
You're right. It was like a photographic lineup. And she picked out the husband right away. Then we showed her a picture of the dame, piece of her clothing, and she told us how he killed her, where he killed her, where he hid the body.
And he told her nothing about the crime, the victim, or the suspect. How the hell did she do it?
I don't know. But let me tell you this. If the captain says go and pick her up, we go and pick her up.
It's a shame. I was really starting to like her. And after all, if she hadn't offered to help.
Well, look, maybe she'll pull it off. Maybe she can convince the jury. Hell, she convinced me.
Okay, enough talk. I'm starting to get hungry. Time for more donuts. She could have been a good buddy, a friend and a pal.
These are always real good buddies, but we can't reject her. We must reject her.
That cannot protect her. What if she says that we're too vicious?
Aren't you a detective? A sleuth?
It's simply that we cannot be her buddy. We must sit down and tell her the truth.
No, Laura. She's a suspect now.
I know, but I was really starting to like her, even if she is unusual. I mean, it's disappointing. She was starting to be a buddy.
Well, Laura, we've always been fine companions.
My crony.
My mate.
We'll always be harmonizing.
Like Sherlock and Watson.
Like Magic and Johnson.
If she says her perception has been growing since her youth, it's simply not be a good defense for her, and we just can't tell her the truth. By the way, did you hear about the escape? A psychic midget that had custody.
No, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah. Now she's a small, medium, and large. Well, we know that her days are numbered.
As the evidence mounts.
But now she's just a suspect, and that's all that really counts. Laura, did I ever tell you that I once dated a suspect?
No, I don't think you did.
Yeah, it was tragic. She broke it off a week before we met.
Alright, I got one. What did one psychic say to the other?
I don't know what.
You're fine, thank you. How am I?
Somebody, I'll always be right beside you. You'll still be my pal. Though she won't admit she killed him.
She's denying it all, but we're onto her goal.
the research assignments that I've undertaken for this firm, for this law firm over the years, this one was the most fun.
And?
Bottom line, you will not find a judge in New York State who will allow a psychic defense to murder to get to a jury. But if you did, a clear majority of the jurors would buy that defense, if your client was persuasive enough.
I don't understand.
Well, you know, most people really believe in psychic abilities. And there's a tremendous industry of professional psychics who they convince the credulous to invest money with them, or they allow them to listen in on their relatives who are dead. I mean, you know, you'd be amazed at how popular psychics are. I mean, they have TV programs on them. Police forces go and use them and get help from them. And then there are universities that have professors who are actively trying to find out whether in controlled experiments people have some form of extrasensory perception.
What are the results?
Well, there's no aha moment, you know, to date. And most researchers feel that it's really intentional trickery or really self-delusion. But you know, I did read something in the U.S. National Academy of Science, which in 1899 gave a report, 1988 gave a report on this issue.
And what did it say?
I'll quote right from here. There is no scientific justification from research conducted over a period of 130 years for the existence of parapsychological phenomena.
So why is it that you say if a judge allows a psychic to testify and the psychic is persuasive, that she can convince a jury?
Because once, and only once, a psychic actually got to testify about her paranormal activities. This was in a civil trial. And the jury bought it wholesale.
When was that?
Oh, not too long ago in Pennsylvania. This was a professional psychic who gave readings to make a living. And she claimed medical malpractice by a hospital had ruined her psychic abilities, and she sought damages.
Don't tell me she won.
Well, the judge did warn the jury that they couldn't give an award on that basis.
And?
The jury was out less than an hour, and they awarded her almost $1 million.
$1 million? Don't tell me she kept it.
Oh, no, of course not. You know, the judge felt that the jury hadn't listened to his instructions, and so he tossed it. And then after a few years, they had a retrial, and the case was dismissed. But you can see what happens when a jury is let loose on a case with an attractive plaintiff who also happens to be a professional psychic.
That's a hell of a case.
You know, when it was out for a little while, Republicans all over the country were just trashing trial lawyers. And so even President Reagan got involved.
Listen, that's good enough for me. Why don't you write this up in a memo? I have a meeting tomorrow with the partners. We're deciding whether or not to take on a case of a woman who killed someone, claiming that she saw his aura coming at her and she shot him in self-defense.
Did he actually attack her, Marty?
I don't think so. I just think that she felt his aura.
Well, did he have a weapon in his hand?
Not that I'm aware of, but we're going to have to do some research if we agree to take this case on.
You know, really, you've got to have more than an aggressive aura. I mean, without a weapon in the victim's hand, no judge in New York State will allow a plea of self-defense.
Yeah, but you know what? I wangled Harry Edison to work on this case. He's a brilliant guy. Who knows what he'll come up with?
Why do you want this case, Marty?
Because I believe her.
Do you actually believe she has psychic powers?
Indeed I do.
Oh my God, this is... Barnum was right. there's one born every minute. Come over here, Shirley. Shirley, Edith, and Arnie, come over here. Our research seemed to finally be paying off. Marty is off to the races again. So I want Marty just admit the jury will not ever quit. Anyone knows that Alice can't get the court to supplant.
Marty's got high hopes. He's got high hopes. He's got high apple pie in the sky hopes.
So when the team is getting low, instead of letting go, just ask Marty to grant.
Lawyers here are nothing short of brilliant. Lawyers here are nothing short of brilliant. Lawyers here are nothing short of brilliant. If trouble calls and his back's to the wall, Marty will stand by her, give it his all.
He is a great defense lawyer. He can be a real destroyer. You should see him cross-examine. He's a bit of a hand.
Marty's got high hopes. He's got high hopes. He's got high apple pie in the sky hopes.
So when the team is getting low, instead of letting go, just ask Marty to grant.
Lawyers here are nothing short of brilliant. Lawyers here are nothing short of brilliant. Lawyers here are nothing short of brilliant.
Oh, Marty's got all of the research done. He'll be trying some when he makes his motion. All he really wants is nullification.
And he wants some modification. And also some over communication. Declaration. He's done.
Well, Alice, as I'm sure you already know, the firm has agreed to let Marty represent you in the event a criminal case is brought against you. And I've been roped in to offer assistance.
Yes, thank you. Marty called me this morning.
Of course, you already knew this was going to happen because you told me that in the Harvard Club.
Well, yes, I did.
That was my aura.
Do you want her to begin at a time talking about her clairvoyant abilities?
Look. Now that we're embarked on this venture, you're going to have to tell Marty and myself everything we need to know about your past history and what you claim are your clairvoyant activities.
Yes, I understand. Well, where would you like me to begin?
At a time when you first realized you had special powers.
Why? I guess I always realized I had special insights my friends didn't share. Even when I was a little girl, I would see colored lights around people. And I would be able to tell from looking at these lights things that had happened and things that were going to happen. Even when I looked in the mirror, I could see my own aura. But this brought me a great deal of unhappiness growing up.
Why was that?
Well, I like to talk, and I was always telling things I shouldn't.
And I suppose a lot of people didn't care for what you were telling them was going to happen.
Right. Well, if you're born blind, people show you sympathy and compassion. But if you're born with an extra set of eyes, People are frightened by what you can tell them, and they lash out when they're scared.
Alice, did anyone else in your family have these abilities?
Yes, my mother and my grandmother. My mother was always trying to protect me by telling me not to volunteer information unless I was specifically asked. But I was very strong-willed, and I was always getting into trouble by telling people secrets.
Now, did you gain a reputation for extrasensory perception around your neighborhood?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My ability to read auras was well known among my family and friends. Pretty soon my days and my evenings were practically given over to readings.
And after a while, when you were married, you started charging for your services, right?
Right. Well, it was taking up so much of my time, I actually felt like I needed a housekeeper, so I began charging a very modest fee.
So when you would see an aura, how would you interpret it?
Well, by the colors in the aura.
So you're saying that different colors had different meanings?
Right. So every color I see in an aura, it's made up of hundreds, sometimes thousands of shades and flecks of other color. So, for instance, cancer or sickness, that shows up in an aura as gray, but hundreds of shades and flecks of gray. And if I see it as gray in somebody's aura, I would say, get yourself to a doctor immediately and have yourself checked out.
You know, Harry, that's exactly what happened to us. Alice saw something in my wife's aura. She was right. She had to have tests, but she was cured.
Oh, it's a shame you can't testify. Let me ask you this. At some point, do you go after police departments so that you can work with them?
Well, the police would come to me, and I would interpret what I saw in the photographs they would show me.
You could see colors in the auras you perceive in photos?
Well, yes. So, violence, for instance, it shows up in an aura as hundreds of shades and flecks of red. And it would leave an impression on a photograph, almost like a negative, that I could read and interpret. Oh, and I would always tell the police to bring an article of clothing worn by the victim.
And how often were your services requested by the police?
Oh, goodness. They must have called almost weekly for appointments.
And you say you never charged?
No, never. I was worried for the safety of my family.
And did you request publicity?
No, never any publicity.
Why not?
You know, I truly was worried for my family. I didn't know who might come after me.
So how do you suppose Thompson learned of your involvement in his case?
Well, I suppose that one of those police detectives must have accidentally let the information slip.
Thompson?
Yeah, he was the accused in the case, the guy
All right, now we come to the crux. I want you to tell us everything you can recall about the events that you think are going to lead the police to arrest you.
Sure. So I got a call from the captain of the Port Washington Police Department asking for my help in an ongoing case. He couldn't tell me much except to say that a woman was missing and maybe I could help figure out where she was. So no problem, I went down to the station and I met with two detectives. I think it was Detective Sam and Laura. And they showed me a series of photographs of men and one of the missing women, and they gave me a blouse that belonged to her.
And what did you see?
Well, immediately I picked out a photograph of the man who I later found out was Jack Thompson. His aura in the photograph was just truly frightening. And then they gave me the picture of the victim and a blouse that she had worn, and I could tell immediately that they had been married and they had had a terrible fight, over the course of which he had strangled her to death. I told the police where it happened and the vicinity of where they could find the body, and that was it.
And then what happened?
Well, they found the body exactly where I told them to look. But they couldn't arrest him at the time because of what they said was insufficient evidence.
So how did Thompson find you?
I have no idea. A week later, he burst into my office, right past my secretary, and announced that he knew that I had helped the police and accused him of murdering his wife.
So what did you do?
I was terrified. I told him I had said nothing to the police that could be used against him in a court, and I demanded that he leave immediately.
Well, what did he say in response to that?
He didn't believe me. He said he knew psychics were used to solve crimes because he had seen a television show about it, and I was a threat that he wasn't prepared to allow to exist. I mean, he truly was frightening. I reached into my desk drawer where I kept a revolver for emergencies. I pulled it out and I fired.
That's some story. Did you ever fire that gun before?
Never. It had been in my desk drawer for 2 years.
Now look, this is a very important question. And I want you to think carefully before you answer it. Did he say or do anything in a threatening manner before you fired? Anything at all?
No, but his aura was truly, truly threatening and frightening. It indicated to me that he intended to kill me, to strangle me, just as he had done to his wife, and to do so before he left my office.
Well, you've certainly given us a lot to think about. I don't recall another case, any case, where a psychic pleaded self-defense after shooting an unarmed man.
Yeah, Alice, listen, I'm firmly in your corner. I know what your abilities are, but I think Harry's going to need some convincing.
Well, I'm sure, and you're right about that, but I'm sure that we can find some pigeonhole somewhere in the law which will allow us to mount a credible defense.
I sure hope that you can.
You can't foresee that?
Look, I'm not a fortune teller, and I'm not always right in every case. I leave certainty to the Lord.
I'm sorry to barge in, but there are 2 detectives in the waiting room. They're here to see the lady.
Show them in.
Sam and Laura, I've actually been expecting you both.
Oh, Alice, I'm sorry. You know how we feel about this.
Yeah, DA swore out a warrant for your arrest. We got to take you in.
All right, listen, I'll stay here with you, Alice. Harry, you better go get the ball rolling.
All right. Judy, call my wife. I'm not going to be home for dinner.
She's a psychic with a problem in her claim of self-defense. She can prophesy the future when an aura is intense. Must she test us with her story?
A psychic cannot see into the future. Only what you'll do when you arrive there. I can see it in your aura, what you'll do if I don't stop you. I step in before you get the chance when confronted with the problem. I preempted in advance.
Every living creature has an aura she can see. No one can conceal it from her gift of prophecy. When she pulls her evil when your aura is to blame. Everybody has one all the same.
Every living creature has an aura or ID. Just another signal to consider too. Many people's auras do not mean a thing to me. Not unless it's murder that they do. I'm a psychic with a problem. In my claim of self-defense, I can prophesy the future when an aura is intense.
She's a psychic with a problem, and her fate is in your hands.
It's because I see your auras that I know you'll understand.
Look more closely at our auras. We may never understand, but we still believe.
Yeah,
5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes, and there's beverages and snacks for anybody that's interested.
Just like
Of course they should. So Sam.
But it's okay.
Sitting in that chair. Not a bit. Not a bit.
What's her story?
Well, simply put, she claims that her psychic powers convinced her that the murdered man intended to shoot him. So she shot him right between the eyes.
Self-defense?
Well, he didn't have a weapon. He made no threatening gestures. I guess it all depends on whether you believe in psychological, paranormal psychology. I don't know.
Well, do you?
Not on a bell. It was all I could do to keep from gagging while she was telling us her story. I don't know about you. I've lived a long life and I've never seen a ghost. I think this is all malarkey.
What about Marty?
Oh, he believes everything. He doesn't seem to understand that if a judge won't allow her to testify, as to her feelings and her psychological abilities, we have no defense at all.
So what can you do?
Well, the obvious thing to do in a case like this is to hire a couple of tame psychiatrists, let her plead guilty by reason of not guilty by reason of insanity, put her on the stand, and let the psychiatrist testify she's crazy as a bedbug.
So why don't you do that?
Because she won't hear it, and Marty won't hear it. And I want to tell you something. There isn't a judge sitting on the bench in New York who is going to allow that lady to testify to her psychic powers.
Poor Harry. I'll bet Florida is beginning to look a lot better to you right now.
I don't know. I'll find some theory somewhere in the law that will allow her to testify. And once she tells her story, the jury will do justice. And yet, after all, the guy she killed was a cold-blooded murderer.
Really? Doesn't that depend on whether you believe in her extrasensory perception? I mean, after all, it sounds like the only evidence that he killed his wife is what she saw interpreted from the colors of his aura.
I'm getting an Excedrin headache.
Well, maybe a solution will come to you when you're commuting in on the train.
Maybe you better call a realtor in Miami. I think I would rather face alligators than the judge we've got in this case.
Well, Your Honor, you haven't sat on many cases like this one before.
Just think, a real-life psychic and a murderous one at that.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if those sorts of people really existed?
Oh, yeah, they could alert the public to impending disasters. Why, you could tune in for the psychic weather forecast on the nightly news.
Casinos around the world would close. And by the lottery, all the psychics would just pluck the numbers from the tea leaves.
Obamacare would be in big trouble. Psychic insurance agents could predict a cancer diagnosis, and the carriers would deny coverage based on a future existing condition.
Listen, you're meeting with the attorneys here in chambers or in the courtroom?
No, right here. The DA's filed a motion to preclude testimony or any reference by counsel regarding defendant's so-called psychic abilities. This trial's gonna be better than sex.
It's not. You want me to bring them in?
Sure. Stick around, Henry, if you like. You're my clerk. This ought to be titillating.
Assistant District Attorney Friendly for the people and Mr. Lowell representing the defendant, Alice Meadows, Your Honor.
Good morning, gentlemen. Have seats. I thought we'd have a little chat regarding the district attorney's motion in limine. I'm not ready to rule yet, but I thought it would be helpful for the three of us to talk before we started jury selection.
Delighted, Your Honor. The people have laid out their position in our briefs, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Friendly, but most of my questions are for your adversary. Tell me, Mr. Lowell, does anybody actually believe psychics are for real?
Yes, indeed, Judge. My client isn't a charlatan. She's a professional psychic. There's many people that believe in psychics, including, quite frankly, the police that were investigating the underlying case that's involved here.
If psychics are so great, why aren't they rich? Why don't they just pick the lottery?
I predict your hyperbole will do better with the jury, Mr. Friendly. Mr. Lowell, have you any precedent, any at all, where evidence of psychic powers has been admitted in a court of law?
Yes, I do, Judge. There's that famous case in Pennsylvania where a psychic was permitted to testify as to her psychic abilities. It was a malpractice case.
Sure, but in that case, the judge told the jury that they specifically could not consider whether the plaintiff actually had psychic powers. And then the judge threw out the jury's verdict on the ground that it had been unduly influenced by her testimony.
But there's also no case in any jurisdiction where a judge has specifically ruled out psychic testimonies to psychic abilities. You know, there's that case in upstate New York in Watkins Glen. We cited it in our brief, Judge. What happened there was the prosecution used a psychic to assist in jury selection, and that was a criminal case.
But that was a matter of having an observer in the gallery during jury selection, not taking live testimony as direct evidence. And besides, it's my understanding that since the defense never objected in that case, the court never actually ruled. That's not much of a precedent.
There's not much out there, Judge.
You see, counsel, I don't want the jury to speculate on whether psychics are for real. The only issue is whether your client had any legal justification for gunning down an unarmed man. I'm not going to let this trial degenerate into a battle over whether some premonition can serve as a justification for murder.
Yeah, but Judge, my defense isn't based on junk science. There are plenty of people out there. Prosecutors, defense lawyers, many judges. You know what? The New York State Bar Association issued a report that said a defense counsel could use any expert it wanted, including a psychic, to assist in any way in a criminal case.
You want this court to rely on the ruling of a bar association? You're going to have to do better than that, Sonny. What you're really saying is that you don't have a case, not a single case, where somebody claiming to be a psychic in a homicide wants to justify a homicide and is allowed to testify that the victim's aura and nothing else put her in fear of imminent danger to her life.
That's true, isn't it, counsel?
Well,
you're asking me to make new law by allowing the jury to speculate over whether your client has some psychic power that can't be corroborated by anything concrete.
Well,
what I don't understand is why you don't simply plead your client not guilty by reason of insanity.
Because she's not insane.
Well, one of the two of you is. Let's have it just be her, counsel.
Judge, listen. Give me some time. I'll speak with my client. I'll see what she wants to do.
I'll give you the weekend, but we're starting trial on Monday. Court starts promptly at 9 a.m. We break for lunch from 12:45 to 2:15. I send the jurors home at 4:15. I'll take issues from counsel, and then we're done at 4:16. I have a tea time with Judge Cohen at 4:30. You best understand the rules. Oh, and one more thing. You should be pretty much aware that I'm convinced not to allow any reference to your client's so-called psychic abilities. And I'm going to preclude questioning any potential jurors as to their belief in paranormal activities. Have a good weekend, gentlemen. I'm off to the golf course. We're starting trial Monday morning. Jury selection starts at 9. I make them hurry, so I never worry that I'll get out of court on time. I'll be at my finest Monday morning, spruced up and looking in my prime. Lawyers abhor me, but jurors adore me, 'cause I get out of court on time. When I'm presiding, keep your phones off. When I'm deciding, don't you even cough. But don't be delinquent Monday morning. Make sure your shoes have got to shine. Pay close attention or you'll risk detention. 'Cause I get out of court, then you get out of court. For God's sake, let's get out of court on
Well, gang, as Oliver Wendell Holmes would say, we're in deep shit.
Yeah, you got that right. We got no defense, and only this weekend to come up with a theory. I can't understand why Marty won't plead the insanity defense. I gave him a case in Wisconsin where some guy used a sword to kill someone he claimed was stealing his psychic energy. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity. We could tailor our facts to fit right within that case.
Look, I've spent hours with Marty since his conference with the court. I've argued with him till I was blue in the face. The client won't hear of it. She says it would be a betrayal of all she stands for, of her mother, of her grandmother. I don't know what to do.
So what do we do?
Well, we've got to find a theory, a case, something that will allow her to tell her story to the jury.
Well, I've checked everything I can think of that might give her a full defense to a murder charge. I can't find anything that fits.
When you say a full defense, I did a little work. There's a partial defense called extreme emotional disturbance. And what it does, well, you studied this in law school.
Well, I did. Actually, I know it. I studied it in law school. It's an affirmative defense. It's codified by statute. It allows a jury to reduce a charge of manslaughter and twist it up and make a murder charge into merely manslaughter. First, the defendant must prove she was more than just angry. She has to prove that she was so emotionally disturbed that she lost control. But what's key for us is that once she raised the defense, the judge has to allow her to tell her story, whatever it is, and that she had a reasonable excuse for her state of mind, i.e., her emotional disturbance. And what's absolutely critical is that what's reasonable is determined from the defendant's viewpoint.
So Alice can testify that she was so terrified of the aura emanating from her victim that she lost control, and that's why she pulled out her revolver and shot him in the head.
That's right. And if the jury buys it, it goes from murder down to manslaughter.
But what's good with that? A reduction from murder to manslaughter. Can't we do better?
Let me tell you.
Please.
If we get it before the jury can do any damn thing it wants to. You know?
Yes.
We'd be in business.
So you want us to find some cases?
This weekend, the two of you go to the library. I'm sure there's a million cases dealing with extreme emotional disturbance. It's not just in this state, it's in other states around the country. Write a brief.
Yeah.
We'll give it to the judge Monday morning, just before we have jury selection. Then the judge is going to have to eat his words, because that's the law. Even though it's an affirmative defense, he'll have to eat his words. Marty will be able to talk about extreme emotional disturbance to the jury during selection, in his opening. He'll even be able to put witnesses on to show that she was emotionally disturbed. And I think we're back in business.
It's as easy as EED.
Yes, extreme emotional disturbance. That's the thing.
All rise. The Supreme Court of the State of New York is now in session. The Honorable Abner Doubleday presiding.
Call the next case.
People v. Alice Meadows.
Ready for the people, Your Honor.
Ready for for the defense?
Now, before I bring up a panel of jurors, I'm going to rule on the people's motion to preclude any reference to the defendant's so-called psychic abilities. Mr. Friendly, I've read the defendant's submissions, and I'm sorry to say I've changed my mind. What? The reliance on extreme emotional disturbance as an affirmative defense to intentional murder changes the equation entirely, so I'm going to deny your motion.
But, Your Honor...
No need to argue. There's plenty of precedent right here in the Court of Appeals. The case law is perfectly clear and long-standing.
So you're going to let her testify to this mumbo-jumbo?
Mr. Friendly, I can't keep it out. A testimony as to her so-called psychic energy is proper. According to the case law that the defendant cited, the jury is required to look at any emotional disturbance she might have from her perspective. Whether it was reasonable for her to fear for her life and whether that fear itself was reasonable are questions for the jury. Listen, I didn't make this case law. I don't even like it. But the law is clear that the jury has to make that determination. And to do that, they have to hear what the defendant has to say as to why she fired that revolver. So everything comes in. But I'm assuming you knew that already from your client. All right, counsel, let's pick ourselves a jury.
Your Honor, the people call Samuel Levine.
Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please tell the court and the jury your name and position.
I'm Samuel Levine. I am a detective attached to the Police Department of Port Washington.
Now, detective, you and your partner were the investigating officers in the Thompson case, isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
Did you find any sort of weapon on or near the late Mr. Thompson's body?
None that we could find.
In the course of your investigation, did you question Ms. Meadows thoroughly about the events surrounding the shooting?
Sure. She said she'd come into her office, he'd come into her office, stormed past her secretary, and broke right into her room. Said he'd accused her. She knew that she had accused him of murder. He knew that she was a psychic, and he knew that she wouldn't rest until she'd gotten him arrested, and he wasn't going to stand for it.
And what did she say happened next?
Well, she was scared out of her mind. She pulled a revolver out of her desk, and she shot him.
Now, did she say that he had threatened her with bodily harm?
Well, she said it happened instantaneously, but what you just said, that's a hard question to answer.
What do you mean?
Well, we questioned that. We questioned her on that, me and my partner. And according to her, he made no threatening gestures before she pulled the trigger. But she said his aura was frightful. She interpreted it, according to her, as meaning that he was going to strangle her, just the way he did his wife, and he was going to do it right then and there.
But according to what she told you, he never made that threat, did he? Those words never came out of her mouth.
That's right. The only thing that was threatening her with immediate violence was, his aura.
Detective, do you know what an aura is?
No.
Have you ever seen one?
No.
Until this case, had you ever even heard the word?
No.
If it had been up to you and your partner, would you have called in a psychic to help you with the Thompson case?
No.
Tell me, did you believe in psychics or psychic powers?
No. The only reason I talked to her was because the captain insisted.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Tell me, sir, can you explain to the jury how the defendant just happened to pick Mrs. Thompson's face out of the photographic lineup you presented her with?
Well, no, I can't.
Have you an explanation as to how she was able to point to the vicinity where the body of Mrs. Thompson was found?
Are you kidding? I can't even figure out how she knew it was a body. We certainly didn't know that anybody had been killed, although we had our suspicions.
Was it your decision to close the case on Mr. Thompson?
No. My partner and I knew that we couldn't go forward without sufficient evidence, but the actual decision to close the case was made by someone above my pay grade.
Now, sir, if you have another missing persons case that appears to raise suspicions of foul play, and the decision is up to you, would you call in a psychic for assistance? A person, for example, like Miss Meadows?
Objection, that calls for speculation.
You open the door, I'll allow.
Go ahead, Detective. Would you call in a psychic like Miss Meadows?
Yeah, I would. I just can't figure out how she knew what she did.
All right. Now, turning to your investigation in this case, did you investigate whether the defendant had any connection with Mr. or Mrs. Thompson prior to her helping find the body?
Yes, we did. And no, there wasn't. Her only involvement with either of them came about because the captain asked her to take a look at this case.
And how much did she charge your department for her services?
Not a thing. She said that she never charged the police for doing work for us.
Well, how about publicity? Did she want the newspapers, radio, television to learn of her involvement so she could get more clients?
No, exactly the opposite. She said it was really important to her that we not allow any publicity at all. She said she was afraid for her family. Oh, I just wish that partner of mine hadn't told Thompson what she told us.
No further questions.
Can he redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Well, we'll take our usual mid-morning recess now for milk and cookies. 15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, then we'll resume this deathless epic.
All rise!
Well, old Harry had a good morning, but the forces of justice will have their day. Make no mistake about that. They have to put the defendant on the stand next. They have no choice. And once she starts in on testifying on that psychic mumbo-jumbo, it'll be Katie bar the door. Marty Lowell's going to take her on direct, and he'll try to hornswoggle the jury. But it'll never work. Once I start my cross-examination, she'll be on her way to state prison. Marty will never convince a sophisticated New York jury that somebody claiming to be a psychic can gun down an innocent man in cold blood based on nothing more than some mystical aura. But he'll try. Believe me, he'll certainly try. He'll try the old razzle-dazzle give him an act with lots of flash in it, and the reaction will be passionate. Give him the old hocus pocus, bead and feather 'em, but I will clear the magic from their eyes. I'll show that his hinges all are rusting, and that in fact he's just disgusting. Razzle-dazzle 'em, but I'll make them all wise. best of him. I know how to get the best of him. Give him the old three-ring circus, starve and stagger him. He'll be in trouble no matter his stance. Though he is stiffer than a girder, I won't let her get away with murder. Razzle-dazzle him, razzle-dazzle him, razzle-dazzle him, but I'll end up the star.
Well, Harry, how did you go today?
Oh, it went really well. The people put on this detective, and he was better for us than he was for them. You know, I think we really might pull this thing off.
You know, I saw your client on TV today. She's a very good-looking woman. You never mentioned that.
Never thought much about her. It's just another case to me.
Well, you're certainly spending an awful lot of time with her.
Oh, well, sure. I was trying to get her to go with an insanity defense. She wouldn't go along.
Is she married?
Yeah.
Well, why are you so involved in her case? This isn't like you.
Well, what, are you jealous or something?
Well, she appears to be at least 4 years younger than you.
I can't believe we're having this conversation.
Harry, do you really believe that she has psychic powers, that she has superstitious powers that are unavailable to the rest of us?
No, of course not. Of course not.
What do you really think?
Well, who would believe a story like that? I mean, she claims she talks to ghosts. She reads auras. Who's going to believe something like that?
Well, you're hoping the jury can.
You know, when we were picking a jury, half of them said they believed in psychics. The other half said they didn't believe in psychics at all. It's a crapshoot. I don't know how it's going to go, but I'll tell you this, I don't think she'll be convicted of murder. Even the judge is starting to come along. If she does serve time, I don't think it's going to be that long.
When does she testify?
Tomorrow, Marty's going to take it.
Oh, that's good. The case will be over soon, and you can go back to your normal boring stuff.
It's so nice to be appreciated. Well, is she ready?
As ready as she's gonna be.
Now, what does that mean?
You know, she's definitely afraid that she's going to make a fool of herself testifying about her psychic abilities in a public court. She's also really scared about being convicted, and quite frankly, so am I.
But I thought you were a believer. And doesn't she know how this is all going to come out?
No, she doesn't.
You mean she doesn't know if she's going to be convicted and go to jail or be free? She doesn't know that?
Not any more than you or me.
Are you ready for this?
I better be.
I have to learn to trust myself. I'm not like anybody else. I've only had to run so far, so good. But I will come to a place where the only thing I feel are loaded guns. face, and I'll have to handle pressure. My wife may call me paranoid. Pressure. It's just that I cannot avoid pressure. The judge will use this trial as his crusade. Now here I am with my defense and some Peter Pan advice. No, I don't want no disgrace, and I'll have to handle pressure. All prepared and ready to go. Psych 1, Psych 2, what do you know? So my client isn't so clean, she's not so discreet. What does it mean?
I'll tell you what it means. Pressure. Pressure.
Must ask for help, I'm not alone.
Pressure.
No need to answer on my own.
Pressure.
Not sure I'll have some cosmic rationale. But here I am in the ninth, 2 men out and 3 men on. Well, I'm way to look, but inside, where I'll have to handle
Pressure. Pressure.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Pressure. All rise.
Good morning, counsel. Good morning. We've been on trial for a week now. Mr. Lowell, how much longer for the defense?
We just have one more witness, Judge. We're going to be putting the defendant on the stand, Alice Meadows.
I must say, I've been anticipating this for quite some time. Let's get started.
The defense calls Alice Meadows to the stand.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Alice, good morning.
Good morning.
For how many years have you been a practicing psychic with an ability to read and interpret auras?
Well, all my life. I never remember a time when I didn't.
And did you receive any training?
No, I was born this way.
Now, you were present during the testimony of Detective Samuel Levine, were you not?
I was.
And were his statements concerning your involvement in the Thompson missing persons case accurate?
They were.
Now, according to Detective Levine, you found the location of Mrs. Thompson's body through an examination of an aura emanating from a blouse you've been given. Is that true?
That's correct.
And you claimed her husband had strangled her during a violent argument, again based on the auras you had seen and interpreted from photographs of Mr. Thompson and his wife. Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
Now, could you please describe for the jury what auras are?
Well, they're composed of different colors.
And where are they?
Well, they're around everything I see.
Around me?
Well, yeah, it's around everything. I never remember a time when I looked at something or someone and didn't see it. It surrounds the entire body, it fits around the entire body, and every aura has, well, a different size and different colors.
And how do you know what the different colors mean?
Well, I don't ever remember learning how to speak, and yet I understand spoken language. I never learned to delineate the colors of an aura. I've just always had the ability.
Now, what was your normal method of operation when you worked with the police?
So the police would come to me and they would bring a photograph, and if there had been a violent act, it would leave an impression on the photograph, almost like a negative that I could read and interpret.
Now, would the police hand you articles that were worn by a subject?
Almost always. And if there had been a very strong color in the aura, it would leave a very strong impression. Well, I guess a good way to explain it is, well, a ring. If somebody had worn like a ring for 20 years, but nothing had ever happened to them, to me it would just be a ring. But if another person wore that same ring for 2 minutes, and in those 2 minutes they were hit by a car, that's the impression of the aura that I would see.
Let me ask you this. Were police departments generally satisfied with the results of your efforts?
You know, not always. I don't have any control over what I see, and I don't always see everything that the police think is important. Well, when you're a psychic, you just don't see everything.
Did there come a time when you were in contact with a captain from the Port Washington Police Department?
Yes.
And could you tell the court and jury about that?
Well, sure. Well, this man called me, and he introduced himself, and he asked for my help with a case.
And was this an unusual occurrence?
No, I would get calls from the police department on average of once a week. So, you know, I went down to the station and I met with 2 detectives, and they showed me a series of photographs, kind of like a lineup, and they asked if I had any knowledge of who might have had any occasion to interact with the missing woman.
Now, would you please give the court and jury your best recollection of everything that transpired at the police station during that meeting?
Sure. Well, one of the photographs jumped out at me right away. The aura of the man in the photograph, well, it was just terrifying. He was a really bad man. And then they showed me a picture of the victim, and they gave me a blouse that belonged to her. And I could tell by examining the photograph and the blouse that she and the man had been married, and they had had a terrible row over the course of which he had strangled her to death. So I told the police where it had happened and when it had happened, and then I left.
Did you ever meet the man in the photograph?
Yes. About a week later, he burst into my office, past my secretary, and announced that he knew I had told the police that he had murdered his wife.
And did the 2 of you have a conversation?
We did. We did. He said he knew that I had been called in by the police to find her, and he knew I had accused him of killing her and hiding the body, and he knew that I wouldn't be satisfied until I convinced the police of his guilt, and he wasn't going to stand for it.
Did you respond?
I did. I said to get out of my office, that I had said nothing that could be used against him in court, but his aura revealed to me that nothing I could say or do would sway him from what he intended.
And what was that?
Well, to strangle me, to kill me, just as he had done to his wife.
What did you do?
Well, I was absolutely in a panic. I reached into my desk where I kept a revolver for emergencies. I pulled it out and I fired. I mean, the whole thing from beginning to end couldn't have been longer than, you know, maybe a few seconds. And then immediately I called the detectives and I told them what had happened, and to please come straight over.
No further questions, Your Honor. Your witness.
Ms. Meadows, you claim to be a professional psychic, isn't that right?
Yes.
Did you earn any license as a psychic or an aura reader?
Well, there's no professional training for what I do, if that's what you mean.
There's no board of certification as there is, for example, in medical specialties?
No, none.
Now, when you look at a person's aura, what do you see?
Well, so you look at me and you see my hair, my sweater, my shoes. I look at you, I see your hair, your jacket, your shoes, all surrounded by a glow.
Does everyone and everything have an aura?
Well, every living thing has an aura that's stronger than things that are inanimate, but yes, everything has an aura all the time.
Now, when people are willing to pay you for your services as a psychic reader, do you start out by simply talking to them?
No, I use a crutch. It makes people very uncomfortable if you simply stare at them for a long time. So I use a deck of cards, a piece of jewelry, an old shoe. It just really makes people feel more comfortable, but all I have to do is, look at the aura to read it.
Do you ever use a crystal ball or a black cat?
No, and I don't have a cauldron in my kitchen. Look, this isn't a sideshow. Some people are just born this way.
Ms. Meadows, do you bend spoons?
Only in the dishwasher.
Now, I want to turn to events that led to this prosecution, specifically what happened when Mr. Thompson came to your office.
Okay.
Now, did he have any kind of weapon?
No.
Did he say anything verbally to give you any fear of your life?
Well, only through his aura.
So he said nothing at all to give you, he made no statement, no threatening statement, nothing at all.
So just the mere fact that he was in my office unannounced and angry was reason for concern. His aura was threatening and indicated to me that he intended to kill me, to murder me, just as he had done to his wife.
Of course, we have only your word that he murdered his wife. The police could find no evidence to back up that accusation. Isn't that right?
That's what they told me.
Did he make any threatening gesture with his body?
Look, I really don't recall. The whole thing happened very quickly.
How quickly did you pull out the revolver and shoot him?
I don't even remember pulling out the revolver. The whole thing from beginning to end took place in seconds.
Had you ever used that revolver before?
Never. It had been in my desk drawer for 2 years, unused.
Well, why did you have a firearm in any event?
Look, I saw literally thousands of clients over the years. I never knew who might have some occasion to come after me, and I felt like I needed protection. I had a license for the weapon, but until Jack Thompson showed up, I never had any occasion to use it.
And yet you kept a loaded revolver in the top drawer of your desk for 2 years, isn't that right?
Yes.
And if it hadn't been for Mr. Thompson's aura, as you interpreted it, he'd probably be alive today, isn't that right?
I suppose so. I really don't know.
That's odd, you being a psychic and all.
Objection, Your Honor.
Quite right. Save it for summation, Mr. Franklin.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No redirect, Your Honor. The defense rests.
The people have no rebuttal.
Very good. Members of the jury, you obviously understand now why I have repeatedly instructed you not to discuss any of the evidence you have heard in this case amongst yourselves or with friends and family when you go home in the evening. You should not be influenced by anything except your own understanding of the evidence, which has only just now been completed, and my instruction of the law, which won't be given to you until tomorrow. So once again, I'm going to instruct you to refrain from discussing any aspect of this case until tomorrow. Mr. Lowell will sum up at 9 a.m. Mr. Friendly will go immediately after that. We'll break for milk and cookies. And then we'll come back and have my charge to you. All right, you are now excused for the day. Enjoy your evening at home, or wherever you may be.
Lord,
2 days now.
Are you worried?
Well, you're always worried when they're deliberating this long.
Well, you were pretty optimistic when the case ended. What happened?
Well, the judge killed us with his charge. He kept telling the jury that while we may have made out a case for mitigating the murder charge, we hadn't done a damn thing with regard to manslaughter.
Well, what do you think will happen?
Oh, I still expect a verdict of not guilty by self-defense.
Well, why is it taking so long?
Well, you know, it only takes a couple of jurors to get into their heads that they want to follow the judge's instructions. but I think that the jury is going to find that she had psychic power, and therefore that Thompson was a cold-blooded killer. And if they buy that, they buy the whole ball of wax, and they'll probably acquit her on the basis of self-defense.
You don't think she has psychic power now, do you?
Well, we put on a pretty strong case. No, I don't think she has psychic power.
What does Marty think?
Marty is scared to death. Marty is beside himself. He's bananas. Strangely enough, the client is very serene. She thinks she did a good job in her testimony. She really wasn't too concerned because nobody treated her with contempt like she thought that they might. She's willing to accept whatever happens.
Doesn't she know?
Not a clue. Not a clue. No extrasensory perception at all. Listen, Dave. Let's go to bed. It's been a long day, and tomorrow is another day.
More coffee?
No. We'll wait till our guests come here. After all, it's a victory celebration.
Well, I certainly am anxious to meet Alice finally.
Well, Marty will be here too. I mean, he's over the moon. He's over the moon over this.
Well, you really were right about that jury.
I'll tell you, the guy, there was only one holdout. He was out for 3 days. This poor slob really wanted to follow the judge's instructions. But they finally turned them around. Oh, here come our guests.
That was a great win.
All right, enough talk. It's time for a little bubbly. We want to celebrate.
Not that bottle, Harry.
Well, why the hell not?
Trust me, you don't want to open it.
Oh, come on, Myron. You don't really think this bottle has an aura?
Well, it's not the aura that bothers me. It's that mouse inside.
Singular diviner, every order that she reads. One chilling little murder after which she succeeds. One look and suddenly you'll be within her sight. You know you could find yourself in the worst of
put a show like this together in a relatively short time when you're dealing with professionals who are working for a living, you really require a couple of people who are excellent. One is our pianist, Peter Dizozza. The other is our lyricist, Stewart Aaron. And lastly, our cast.
To be a lawyer in a hat over there, and she's happy to speak with any of you on your way out. Enjoy the
What's going on? How are you? Yeah. I'm sorry, what's your name again? Susan, that's right. Oh yeah, at the Hamptons, that's right. Okay, sorry, we got 3 seconds. Good to see you.
It stays on you for about a week. I mean, that you take a shower and you find it on your face. And thanks for coming.
Well done. Well done.
Thanks. Great job. Thanks. What's that? Oh, the glitter. Yeah. Well, I have one more performance on Sunday.
Okay, good. It looks great.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Stage.